Bitte stehen schnell.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Welcome aboard.
Good evening.
Right. Okay. Back, forward. Head.
This away. Okay, so it's 8:30 and we're going to get started. It's another Parshah shir. We're back into the regular weekly Parshas once again after having a break last Shabbos. where we had Parshas Shavuos, so to speak. We're back in the good old Parshas. It's the second reading, the second Parsha of the fourth Sefer in the Torah. We're in the book of Devarim, and we're up to Parshas Nosai. There's so much to be exploring in this Parsha. But before we do that, we have to first go through where we're up to in the calendar. And then we'll do a summary of the Parsha. And then we'll pick one area of the Parsha that we're going to focus on. So starting from the beginning where we're up to in the calendar, it's interesting that today is one of the days, the special days in the Jewish calendar, where the minhag is that we do not say tachnun. No confessional prayers during davening. We don't mention asking Hashem for forgiveness for what we are doing, or we might have done wrong. And the reason for that is because it's a very joyous day. What's so joyous about today? Today is one of the 7 days of Tashlumin. So in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, when we would go in 3 foot festivals, we would make our journey up to the Beis HaMikdash, and we would spend Yom Tov in Hashem's home, close by Hashem, the temple of the Beis HaMikdash. So when it would be time to do this mitzvah of going up to the Beis HaMikdash, we would have to bring with what was called a carbon re'iyah, oilas re'iyah, a carbon that would be brought to celebrate our arrival. We wouldn't come empty-handed. We'd come to Hashem, we bring a gift. What sort of gift? An extra carbon of saying hello to Hashem. In addition to that, there was also the Shalmei Chagiga, extra offerings that people would bring to create celebratory parties and excitement. And that would be additional karbanis. And in addition to that, throughout the year, a person might have had all sorts of different situations, perhaps happy times or worrying times. So in times like that, we would daven to Hashem, talking about which we're going to use this opportunity of today's shir to dedicate to the refuah shalema, a speedy and complete recovery of Frida Bas Rachel. And we're dedicating that. We're learning now that she'd have a complete and refuah shalema. If it was in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, perhaps we would have brought a carbon to Hashem, or at least committed. We could have in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. Instead, today we're committing, we're dedicating a Torah learning. But if somebody back then would have dedicated a carbon, but they live like a week and a half travel from the Beis HaMikdash, what are they going to do? So when they go up to Yerushalayim, the time of a simcha, of a festival, of a Yom Tov, they would then bring with money and buy a carbon and then bring it then. And they would fulfill their dedications and the commitments of a Yom Tov. So it worked out. Although we're going to do a little bit of muting here. You can always unmute yourself. If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself by pushing *6. And if you're on a computer, you can just unmute yourself by pushing the unmute button at any time. So, as we were saying, that the karbanos that the people would bring over Yom Tov would have been an ideal time for all those who were visiting Yerushalayim and not locals, because they weren't always able to bring. It meant that over Yom Tov, there was a very large amount of karbanos that were extras. Now, the halacha is that on Yom Tov, you're allowed to prepare food for Yom Tov needs, if you're going to eat it over Yom Tov. But that's only if you need it for Yom Tov. So if somebody came up on Pesach, the first day of Pesach was Yom Tov, he wouldn't bring extra karbanos, because you can bring it tomorrow. But then the whole Chol HaMoed of the intermediate days of Pesach, everyone would bring all their karbanos. And the same would be true of Sukkot. In the intermediate days of Sukkot, one would bring all their donations and thanksgiving and any other carbon a person might have committed towards Hashem and whatever it might be, oilos and shlomim. Shavuos was the exception, because Shavuos doesn't have a Chol HaMoed. And the day of Yom Tov of Shavuos is 1 day, or today it's 2 days, but then it would be 1 day, and then what would happen after that? So it would work out that everyone who had all the extra karbanos would have to bring it in the Yemei Tashlumin in the follow-on days. And there was a 7-day period which were Yemei Tashlumin. And the Yemei Tashlumin, the days of making up for that which hadn't been done over Yom Tov, started on the day after Yom Tov. And the day after Yom Tov was given a special name, Yom Tevoyach, which was yesterday. Yom Tevoyach, in this particular setting, even in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, would have been on a Sunday. Although the first day of Yom Tov, anyone who lives in Israel today would have only done Yom Tov on Friday. On Shabbos, it would not have been called Yom Tov. It was just a Shabbos. But also on Shabbos, you can't bring your personal karbanos. So the first day of making up for the missed out karbanos was considered like gifts day. There was just so many karbanos everyone was bringing. Also those who wanted to bring it as soon as they could. And also those who were itching to get back home, to go back to work, or to go back to wherever they came back from, would bring on the first possible opportunity. And everyone else who could last a bit longer would bring on the next day, and on the next day, until the whole 7 days had passed. Today is one of those days. The celebration of making up for that which might have been missed over Yom Tov. In Hebrew, Yemei Tashlumin, the days of fixing that which was missed. And in the Rebbe's sichos, in the Rebbe's talks and teachings to us, it becomes a big deal. You probably remember we said that Pesach Sheni taught us that it's never too late. Well, Shavuos had its own mini Pesach Sheni. Whatever we might have missed out over Yom Tov, so we were supposed to be in the mood and the mode of carrying and accepting the Torah. We were supposed to be on fire, and we probably were. But if there's a higher level we want to try and reach for the Shavuos celebration, we're in the Yemei Tashlumin. It's such a special day. We can do this today as well. And this is true for today, which is Tes and Yud and Yud Aleph until Yud Beis Sivan. Every day is one of the Yemei Tashlumin, and we can chaparain and be able to build up the momentum to be able to try and capitalize on the tremendous energy of today. So that's what's going on in the Jewish calendar. On our calendar, that's what's happening with us. That's step number one. Step number two is the summary of the Parshah, and then we go into the discussion. We pick one point. So let's just do a summary of the Parshah, and then we'll open up for some questions, and then we'll go to the Sikha. So the Parashah starts off with a head count of Shevet Levi. Head count of Shevet Levi. We know how many Levim there were. We also know that the Levim were counted at a much larger range. You didn't have to be 20 years old if you were a Levi in order to get into the count. The Levim we read in the last Parashah, which was 2 weeks ago, we read that you could be 30 days old. And from 30 days old, the Levim are counted. But this week we have a different count. And that is, we're counting how many Levim are of serviceable age. Work in the Mishkan. And interestingly, a Levi could only work in the Mishkan from the age of 30. Up until 30, from 25 till 30 was training, 5 years of training. Interesting. And maybe you can only imagine how complicated the work in the Mishkan would be. And as we learn in Rashi, actually also had to do with how strong a person might be. At the age of 30, a person has reached their full strength. A lot of the work the Levim were expected to do were very hard work, schlepping heavy stuff, opening gates, setting things up, taking things apart, all the different jobs that Levim had. And they started from age 30, and they only were in service for 20 years. After the age of 50, they could no longer serve in the Mishkan, in the service of the Avodah of the Levim. And that's the beginning part of the Parashah. About Levim, Gershon in particular, and then in general the head count. And then we go on to have the story of the Soita, where if a woman was accused by her husband acting inappropriately, and she argues that it's not true, nothing happened, nothing went wrong. Now the truth is something did go wrong because she was secluded with an individual, and the husband warned her not to. But even so, the Torah says instead of putting her through a trial with Eidim, which could be prolonged and have all sorts of negative connotations, there's a way around it. And that is ask Hashem to perform a miracle and to demonstrate that she is pure. And that was she would drink from the Meisota, which was the Meir Marim, and they would bring a Mishkan to the house of Hashem, and they would write down the Parashah. They would explain to her that if anything had gone wrong, and she decided to drink the water, she insisted on her innocence. If she wasn't, then the water would be like poison and kill her. But if she was taka innocent, which was the point, then she would drink the water, and that in itself, the fact that she remained alive would in itself demonstrate her righteousness. But more than that, she would be blessed with all sorts of brachas because she'd been through the uncomfortable, challenging situation of having been made to drink the Mei Hamarim with the procedure that came with it. the halachas of Soita that are written in this week's parsha. And right after that, we have the halachas, the laws of the Nazir. The Nazir is the person who commits not to drink wine or grape products, and to not cut their hair, and to not come in contact with a impurity, particularly a person who's passed away. So we're not going to levayas, to funerals, not going to Beisayim, not to go to a graveside. And that would be generally for a minimum of 30 days. The standard amount was a 30-day period, unless the person specified longer. Or it could be even longer, like Shimshon, it was a Nazir from birth. Wife wasn't supposed to cut his hair. But we have the halachas of Nazir, how it works, and how when you're finished, there's a special procedure, which includes bringing karbanos to Hashem. A lot to be spoken about. Interestingly, Rashi points out that the reason why Nazir follows straight on from Soita is because one of the most important lessons that we have to learn from the whole Soita episode, the Wayward Wife episode, is that a person could sometimes be on the straight and narrow all the time, and all it takes is a little lightheadedness, and all of a sudden we find ourselves doing something which could be extremely inappropriate, which is perhaps very, very irregular for us. And the key to the mistake was the fact that I dropped my guard. And the quote from the Tanakh, the Pesach Atav Tzroivitz, Hashem tells Cain that the ability to do an Aveira is at the doorstep. You only have to open the door and the spring jumps out, and the opportunity to do something wrong is there. That's what makes life so worth it, because every moment of our life we are choosing to do the right thing. That's the opportunity of being alive. And Alter Rebbe makes a big deal out of this in the whole Sefer Atanya, Sefer Shabbanim. Alter Rebbe is telling us that we should never convince ourselves, even if we're on arrow and we're smooth sailing, even in the times of our life where we don't feel challenged, we should always remember that we're human. Human means that we're baining him. Or in other words, that the way the Eov says, Barasa Tzadikim, Barasa Rishayim, the average person in the world is not in the category of tzaddik, which means we are a different breed. We are a human breed. And the human breed is in the category of Russia. At any moment, we could slip up. So keeping our guard, making sure we put ourselves in an environment that strengthens our motivation, strengthens our inspiration, keeps us focused. That's how human beings need to celebrate life. Because that way we slip up, we keep on the straight and narrow. So this is an interesting lesson that Rashi points out from the Nazir, the person who refrains from drinking wine and becoming a little lightheaded. It's written to us right after the halachas of Soita, so we should understand the connection. That instead we should put ourselves in good environments, in good company, and choose our friends and who we hang out with carefully, certainly who we allow ourselves to be influenced by. The Parshah then goes on to the brachas the Kohanim would bench Klal Yisrael with. A mitzvah for Klal Yisrael, mitzvah for the Kohanim to bench it. And interestingly, until today, unfortunately, we're still waiting for almost 2,000 years for the Beis HaMikdash to come back, and the Kohanim who would serve in the Beis HaMikdash are on hold. So many things that we are instructed, commanded to do, we're not doing. We don't bring karbanos. We don't wash our hands in the kiyar. There's so many things that we should be doing, we're not doing because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. And this is the main reason why we're asking Hashem for Mashiach. We want to go back. Everybody has so many mitzvahs to do. We should all be in the Beis HaMikdash. But until then, there's only one mitzvah that the Kohanim still do like they did in the Beis HaMikdash, and that's Birchas Kohanim. One of the 613 commandments, one of the mitzvahs that we have is that Kohanim are instructed, like the other instructions that they have, the mitzvah to bench, to bless the people. And that's what they would do in the Beis HaMikdash, and we still have that mitzvah today. If we go to shul on Yom Tov, Be'ez Hashem should be very soon, we should be able to go back to shul safely. But whenever that happens, whatever country we are, when the Kohanim will bench the people, that's them fulfilling a mitzvah, like it says in this week's parasha, that they should bench the people, they should give a blessing, they should wish well, they should bless the people meaning all the people who are there, congregants, and the people around that couldn't make it. right after Birchas Kohanim, we then read 12 times the same thing over and over again. What are we reading? We read how in the beginning, in the inauguration, in the first days of when the Mishkan was set up and went live, every day a different shevet, a different tribe brought their gift. The leader of each shevet brought a whole list of goodies for the Beis HaMikdash, gifts to be brought in the Mizbeach, and gifts in general. And those gifts were the Chanukah HaMizbeach, the inauguration of the Mizbeach. And we read it over and over again, how each one brought it. And then we have the sum total, and that's the Parshas Nosai in a nutshell. It happens to be, Parshas Nosai is the longest parsha in the book. And the book means in the whole 5 Chumashim, we have the longest parsha. So if you know anyone who has a bar mitzvah in Parshas Nosai, you know that they have the longest parsha. I think sometimes when we have 2 parshas together, you have Matis Masei, you end up with a longer parsha. But as a single parsha, Nosai wins the race. It's the longest parsha. There's so much goodness going on, and we want to look at this longest parsha with at least one area that we can walk away with a practical lesson. So I'm going to try unmuting people. If anyone has any comments, questions to say, please do speak up and ask or to share. And from there, we're going to move right into one particular area. Okay. So on the screen, I'm putting here, for those of us who have the computer, the title of today's class, Nosai, is Bless You. Bless you. Don't underestimate the power of blessings. And we all bless each other. I bless each every one of us. We bless all those who need a refuah shlema, for Erev bracha, and all the other people who need to have a refuah shlema, a Yeshua, and all the other things that people need. We give brachas. And today we're going to ask ourselves a question. When I say to you, you should be gebenched, you should be blessed, what do I mean? Do I think that I have the power to decide who will have blessings and who won't have blessings? Did I convince myself that when I say, go on?
Kol hamavarach yisparach.
Oh,
Worth blessing people, then you get blessed.
okay, so maybe it's just
And you have the power because you're a kohen anyway.
So I'll give you a bracha. Now, when I give you a bracha,
Amen.
yes, there's a beautiful.
I'll take it.
There's a beautiful story from the Rogatchover. You just reminded me about giving brachas. The Rogatchover Gaon was enormous. He was a Gaon. He was a genius. Apparently, someone once came to where he davens, and after Shachris, he quickly rushed over to him and he said to him, Rogatchover Gaon, give me a bracha. I need a bracha forever it was. The Rogatchover was an enormous Talmid Chacham. Every second was precious. He just wasn't that kind of person that was the brachas type person. So he says to him, I don't do brachas, it's not me. And he was about to walk out. And one of his Talmidim said to him, Rav, Rebbe, or whatever you called him, the Rav doesn't want to give him a bracha. Stay doch in Gemara. Even as the blessing of a simpleton shouldn't be light in your eyes. And you, all the more so. He said, can you? It's one of the 13 ways that the Gemara studies and extrapolates halacha is by way of kal v'chomer, all the more so. So he says to him, there's a Talmudic dictum that says, all the more so, if a simpleton should be taken seriously, then certainly your brachas. Come on, give the guy a bracha. And the Rogatchover was a Gaon, a genius. So he says back. He says back to him right away, without blinking an eye. He says to him, Zog. Zogdu on a kal v'chomer. You're telling me
actually stream is better. What? This 2-minute stream.
Zogdu on a kal v'chomer. Instead of me giving a blessing, and you're going to tell me that by way of Talmudic dictum and by way of a kal v'chomer, I should certainly give him a bracha. You're going to have Talmudic interpretation. You're a simpleton, so you give him a simple bracha. That's the way his response was. It was a cute answer from a genius in his time. But certainly the Gemara seems to be implying that everybody should be giving brachas, and as we're going to learn today, we are encouraging, recommending. It's highly ideal that everybody should bless, and you shouldn't refrain from benching somebody else. It's a good thing to do. But we're going to ask, as if we don't question it. Let's question it, and the question is going to be: we know who we are, and we know who we're not. So what do we think? It might be that we're just trying to make people feel good. I want you to feel uplifted. So I say to you, yeah, you're going to have a good Shabbos. What do I know? I know what's coming your way. I know what's in store for you. I know what you do, what you're worrying about. But I'm telling you, you should have a good Shabbos. Sein gesund. Sein gesund. Yeah, I know if you're going to be healthy or not healthy. Sein gesund means be healthy. It's a blessing. But who do I think I am to start blessing people and expecting that the bracha should have any meaning or any weight? So we know that the answer is it does, because the Gemara tells us to. But we're asking, what sort of weight is it? What sort of wish are we wishing when we bench somebody? No, somebody help me out.
Nobody knows the power of their speech. And if Chas v'shalom people curse, it can also Chas v'shalom have effect. So that's why I rather give blessings than Chas v'shalom curse people.
Absolutely. So if you've got a choice between saying something nice or saying something not nice, definitely say a nice thing. What's the famous quote? If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. Absolutely. Certainly we should use our mouth, our power of speech to say nice things. Good. I like that. Anyone else want to add something else? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're gonna move along, and we're gonna suggest that actually the idea of one person blessing another person does trace itself back to this week's Parshah, where the Kohanim are instructed to use their power of speech to not only not say not nice things and only say nice things, but to actually wish people well. And wish people well means more than just I wish, where it's like describing what's in your heart. It's more than that. It's articulating goodness for somebody else. Bracha. You should bless somebody else. When I bless somebody else, and we're not just saying thank you to Hashem or please Hashem. I'm actually bestowing upon somebody goodness. How so? By the power of my speech. So here we're going to suggest that it comes from the beginning, it bases itself on Birchas Kohanim. And the Kohanim had to give a bracha as recorded in the Torah. And we, by extension, do that ourselves. Now we're going to explore whether it's even okay for us to copy the Kohanim. We're going to explore what happens when the Kohanim do make this bracha, and then we're going to lead that to what we should be doing practically as a relevant, practical life message for us today, how we can make it useful about the lesson of giving brachas to fellow people, even especially in today's society, but whenever we may be. So let's start off with a text from this week's Parshah. That's the first two psukim that we want to focus on. Obviously, the first part, Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he tells Moshe, I need you to tell this message. Pass on this message for me. So who's Moshe passing on the message to? So the next words say, go and speak to Aaron and his sons. So the message that Hashem is giving Moshe in this particular conversation is a message which is with a specific address. Destination is Aaron and his sons. Now what should you tell them? Tell them, this is how you shall bless the children of Israel. And Lahem, tell Aaron that this is what he should say to the Jewish people when he blesses them. What should he say? And then he says the three psukim. Yivarechacha Hashem yishmerecha. May Hashem bless you and watch over you. Bless you and watch over you. So Aaron is to tell the people that Hashem should bless you and watch over you. And the second verse, Yo'er Hashem panav elecha v'yichoneka. May Hashem cause His countenance toward you, to shine towards you, to you, and favor you. His countenance to shine to you and favor you. And the third pasuk, Yisah Hashem panav elecha v'yisemcha shalom. May Hashem raise His countenance towards you and grant you peace. And perhaps the bracha of shalom is probably one of the most effective brachas, because everything else can then become a real bracha. The end is, he says to Aaron, but you should know, they shall bestow my name upon the children of Israel, so that I will bless them. So this is the parasha that we're reading today, and we're discussing first, what does it mean that the Kohanim bench the people? Now we mentioned already that this is a mitzvah that was done in the Beis HaMikdash and is done today like it was done in the Beis HaMikdash, which is enormous. This is the mitzvah that the Kohanim still do today, as it was done in its original form. It's a tremendous mitzvah, and when we can have that to happen, it's brilliant. But this mitzvah, which was done then, was done by Aaron and his sons, is a very, very special mitzvah, but it's not the first time it's mentioned in Torah over here. We already find that the Kohanim were blessing the people earlier on in the book of Vayikra. Let's put it on the screen here. This is Vayikra Perek Tes, and it's right after the Chanukas of Mizbeach. It's in Parshah Shmini. You see Aaron is Yadav. Aaron lifted his hands towards the people and blessed them. He then descended from preparing the sin offering, the burnt offering, the peace offering. Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. Then they came out and blessed the people, and the glory of Hashem appeared to all the people. Almost like the bracha of Aaron to the people, it was the schos of a Yeir Kvod Hashem HaKol that Hashem's glory then descended upon the people. It was the Mishkan actually worked. You know, you have a recipe and you try it out, and you're not sure what's going to happen, and then you take it out. Oh, it worked! How brilliant! How amazing! Or if you have your kids are playing in some sort of scientific experiment, and they try it, and then it worked. They switched on. How brilliant! Well, what happens if your experiment is to make a house for Hashem, and you want Hashem to come into the house, and it's going to be a place where you'll meet Hashem, and then it works. Oh, how special! And this special, Vayera Kvod Hashem HaKol, the glory of Hashem appeared to all the people, was a tremendous simcha. The prelude to that, the introduction to that, was that Aaron came and benched the people. Says the Ramban, actually, the pasuk that we read in Vayikra is the instruction for Aaron to bless the people. Aaron's commandment here, that Aaron lifts his hands and blesses the people, is the mitzvah of Berachas Kohanim. So then, what's the mitzvah that we have this week? So we're going to read the Ramban. He says, this week's mitzvah, it says, this is how you shall bless. I have already mentioned the reading of Shemini that Aaron was commanded to raise his hands towards the people and bless them on that day. Here, Aaron and his sons were commanded to bless them for future generations. 2020. 5,780 years from creation, which is this year, the mitzvah for a kohen to go up and raise his hands and bless the people is recorded in this week's Parshah. So the mitzvah is forever.
What tune did they use in the Beis HaMikdash?
So the pasuk doesn't say which tune they have to sing. There are no musical notes in the scroll, although there are musical notes which are passed down in tradition. It's a good question. If I'm not mistaken, the Capella would sing the like we sing in the Chabad,
right?
He sings, and the Tzemach Tzedek, was it? You said that the Capella, the choir, Zugepasst, matched to the tune the way it was sang in the Beis Hamikdash, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow.
But if I'm not the Levium, I have to again be careful there. The idea is that the tune is very important, but far less important than the content of the words, because the content of the words are the mitzvah d'oraisa that Kohanim fulfilled today, as it was done in the Beis Hamikdash from this week's Parshah. It's the language of the blessing they should use. Interestingly, it's probably one of those mitzvahs that have to be done in the original words, say in Hebrew, rather than say it in a translation. I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing at the top of my head. Okay, so now we have such a powerful mitzvah, such a powerful opportunity. Hashem tells the Kohanim, go and bench the Yidden. Say things that are blessings and say it to them. So it's not just that you wish it. Bless them. Bestow upon them in the wording and the power of your mouth. Bestow upon them goodness. Wow. Torah gives us a koach. Says the chinuch. 1 second. Sounds brilliant. So why only Kohanim? Why shouldn't everyone do this? Why is Torah telling only the Kohen to do it? Let's read the chinuch. By the way, the Sefer Chinuch, others, are one of those svarim that enumerate and list out each of the 613 mitzvahs one by one. The Rambam does it. Yeah, the Sefer Mitzvahs, the Rambam, which we learn every day. We learn a set of mitzvahs. It's beautiful to be able to learn some mitzvahs, and eventually in a whole year you finish all the 613 mitzvahs, and you're learning the same mitzvahs everyone else does. It's tremendous takana. But the Sefer Chinuch adds to that he has a little explanation, background for each mitzvah. So when it comes to this mitzvah, the mitzvah of the kohanim to bench the people, he has a bit of an explanation. Let's read. One of the reasons for this mitzvah, says the Chinuch, in his great goodness, Hashem desired to bless his people through those who regularly reside in Hashem's house. There you have it. The kohen is the one who's dedicated to be the servant of Hashem all day, every day, whose every thought, this is like a Bez Hashem, this is something, this is the ideal. A kohen should be the person whose every thought is devoted to his service, to the service of Hashem, capital H, whose souls are bound to him, again, capital H, with Hashem. A kohen's soul is connected to Hashem in all day. In their merit, this blessing will land on them, and all their deeds will be blessed, and Hashem's pleasantness will be upon them. Here actually an interesting opening to understanding what it means that one human being is blessing, bestowing upon somebody else goodness. How does one human being have the power to do that to another fellow human being? And here we have in the last sentence, they bestow, their deeds will be blessed, and Hashem's pleasantness will be upon them. I'm just going to reverse it to the text that we have from this week's Parshah, if I can find it. Here we go. We have Yivarechecha Hashem Yishmerecha, Yo'er Hashem, the three verses, the three psukim of the blessings, and then we have the final pasuk, V'shamu Shemi B'nei Yisrael, V'ani Avarachem. The Kohanim will put my name upon the children of Israel, so that I will bless them. Hashem's brachas are going to be the blessings that people will get through the Kohanim. And that's the Kohanim that are saying the words, in the power of their words is the driving force, which is Hashem through their words. So in other words, when we say, I bless you, what I'm saying is that any kedusha that I can reach, any getlikite, any godliness that can come through my power of speech should land upon you. So it's not that I feel like I'm in control of what's going to be for your Shabbos, and I'm going to decide you're going to have a good Shabbos, so I'm going to wish you good Shabbos. Much more than that. I know my decisions might be very little, but I'm saying, Hashem, whichever goodness I can give, the power of Kedusha that you have should come into this person and give them a good Shabbos. Let them have a good Shabbos. Let them have a gesund Zumer. Let them have a Zay Gesund, or whatever other bracha I give to somebody else. You should have a lot of parnasa, and you should have a lot of simcha, and shalom in the house, or whatever else a person should have, and then refuah shleimus, etc. So that's the beginning of understanding that the kohanim are chosen because they are the best conduits. They are the best pipelines. And that's why they're blessing. What does that tell us? That tells us that a bracha is basically a carrier. It's not a bracha in itself. It's not a source of blessing, but it's a carrier that will deliver whichever brachas are going on already anyhow. That's going to be how we're going to start framing our understanding when I say bless you. Someone sneezed and I give them a bracha. Okay? Says the next step is to understand, now that we know that there's a mitzvah in the Torah, that the Kohanim give brachas, and the brachas, the power of Hashem, now the question becomes, why so infrequently? Why do we only have brachas Kohanim on Yom Tov? Shouldn't we have brachas Kohanim all day, every day? At least once a day.
Doing Eretz Yisrael. We're doing Eretz Yisrael.
Correct.
We're doing Eretz Yisrael.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, absolutely. If you go to, when I go to Yerushalayim, every time the same thing happens to me, I forget that in Yerushalayim, the Kohanim do Birchas Kohanim every day. So I'm sitting down in shul, and all of a sudden I see everyone shuffling out. I'm like, what's going on? Until I remember, they're going to wash their hands, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to get caught out. So you've got to remember, because really, ideally, just like we put on tefillin every day, just like we daven every day, we say Shema every day. When there's a mitzvah to do Birchas Kohanim, really, one should do it every day. So the question now is, why outside of Eretz Yisrael do we not do it every day? I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the Spanish or Portuguese shul here, or in general Sephardic shul, they do it every Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
But the question still is, why every day? But in Ashkenazi communities, we don't do it every Shabbos. We do it only on Yom Tov. And even in Yerushalayim, even in Eretz Yisrael, in many Chabad shuls, they only do it on Shabbos. They don't do it every day. In other communities, not even on Shabbos. So the question is, why limit such fantastic brachas to such infrequent intervals? And the answer to this is to first understand that there are different types of mitzvahs. There's one type of mitzvah, which is a mitzvah that happens constantly. What's an example of a constant mitzvah? The constant mitzvah happens only 6 mitzvahs. There are 6 mitzvahs to this. One of them is a person is obligated to love Hashem. Person is obligated to constantly fear Hashem. There are a number of different mitzvahs that are constant. Of course, the prohibitions are also constant. It's never okay to kill somebody, even in an Eruv. True? Doesn't help. You can never eat chazarai. It's just not one of the things you're allowed to eat. So the prohibitions are constant also. But of the action mitzvahs, the positive commands, there are 6 constant. Most of the mitzvahs are dependent on either a set time. You only eat the matzah when it becomes Pesach. You only shake the lulav when it becomes Sukkot. You keep Shabbos when it's Shabbos. And whenever the time comes, it's based on a time frame. Some mitzvahs are specific to particular people. So the mitzvah for the king to have a Sefer Torah is only for a king. If you're not a king, you don't have that mitzvah. So it's only particular people. And then there's another variable, which is places. Some mitzvahs only apply when you're in Eretz Yisrael, for example. Some mitzvahs only apply if you're in the Beis HaMikdash. So there's time, place, and people, which are different variables that mitzvahs. But inevitably, those mitzvahs are going to happen. When the time for Pesach comes, whether you like it or not, it's become the time of the mitzvah of matzah. Same thing with people. If you end up becoming anointed as the king, that's it. You get the mitzvah. If you happen to be born as a kohen, you have all the kohen mitzvahs. And the same thing with a place. If you end up moving to Eretz Yisrael, you now have all the mitzvahs that apply to Eretz Yisrael. For whoever lives in Eretz Yisrael, it's inevitable that they're going to have those mitzvahs. There's a third level, and that is the type of mitzvahs they don't have to happen. They don't have to happen. So one example is shchita. There's a mitzvah when a person wants to eat meat, it has to be shechted, it has to be slaughtered. And when a person gets up to slaughter the meat, the Shoichet says, Baruch Atah Hashem, makes a bracha, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvah. That Hashem gave us the mitzvah to do shchita, ala shchita. But if a person never eats meat, or a person never becomes a Shoichet, then they never have the obligation to shecht. You only have to shecht if you decided that's what you want to do. The truth is that tzitzis would be another such an example. You only have to put strings on the corner of your garment if you decide to own a 4-cornered garment. It happens to be that it's accepted already that we all make sure to wear a 4-cornered garment so that it needs to have tzitzis. And we make sure to get an amala amma. You get the biggest size so that it really needs to have tzitzis. And then you put tzitzis on. But that's one of the mitzvahs really that only applies because you've decided to own such a piece of clothing. But if I don't wear such a piece of clothing, then I have no mitzvah to wear tzitzis, to put on tzitzis. Similarly, waiting between milk and meat, it's not really a mitzvah, you don't make a brach on it. But not having milk and meat together, so the time that you wait, you only wait that time because you've had milchiks and you want to have fleishiks. You've had meat, so you want to have milk afterwards. But if you don't have meat, let's say somebody doesn't drink milk, there's someone who's lactose intolerant, so you're only eating your fleishik all day, every day. So you don't have to wait. That one of those mitzvahs on that category is the mitzvah of Birchas Kohanim. The mitzvah for the Kohen to bless the people doesn't have to happen. Strange, because the pasuk seems to say, but interesting, we're going to read now that actually the mitzvah for Kohanim to blanch is only when they're called upon. Let's read it inside from the Rosh. Rosh was on the 3 major poskim from which the Torah paskin all is halachas. So it's in effect one of 3 of the sources of all halacha today. Says the Rosh that the whole thing that is he would go outside. Let's read a little bit. We'll read a little bit. It's a bit of a long read, but we'll do it anyhow. Any priest who does not ascend to the platform, the designated site for the site of the blessings, transgresses 3 commandments. So if a kohen doesn't go up and bench the people, it's a big no-no. It's a triple avera. So in Yerushalmi, says the Rosh, it says that there were 2 kohanim that were feeling too weak or light-headed They weren't in a position to bench. And we read what each one of them did. Jerusalem Talmud states that when Rabbi Ada Pazi was feeling too weak or lightheaded, he would stand behind a column. And when he's standing behind a column means he was absent from the crowd. Rabbi Lazar would depart, he would leave the room. Because otherwise, if he stayed in the room and didn't go up to do Birchas Kohanim, then he would transgress 3 Averis. So what does that mean? That is, he would go outside so that he would not be required to ascend the platform when the cantor, the chazan, calls to the kohanim. What we're learning here is that you only have to go up to do Birchas Kohanim and bless the people if you're summoned, if you're called upon. Statement that a priest does not go up, transgresses 3 commandments, refers to once the cantor has called the priest. This is because the words in the Torah, Emer lahem, say unto them, are rendered in Aramaic translation as when they say to them. Emer lahem, when the congregation or the chazan calls upon them, Emer lahem, now then this is how they should reply, they should say the brachas. If he's in the synagogue, when the cantor calls to the priest and he does not ascend, then he transgresses. If he's not in the synagogue, he does not transgress. Practically speaking, it didn't happen in Shavuos because we weren't in shul. Those of us who were in a garden minyan or wherever else it was, so the chazan would say kohanim out loud, and by calling kohanim, the chazan is summoning all the kohanim to turn around and bless the people. And in response to that, the people get blessed by the kohen. Now, if a kohen doesn't hear the chazan summon because he's out of earshot, he's outside the room, then he has no obligation to go up. He has no obligation. And therefore, we now understand. We ask the question, how come kohanim are blessing so infrequently? How dare they not use this tremendous opportunity more often? The short answer we've said so far is, they don't have to. They don't have to. They only have to go when they're summoned. And if they're not summoned, there's no mitzvah. The good answer. Have we answered the question? Why do the kohanim bless so infrequently? Because they don't have to. Is that a good enough answer? I'm going to say no. Why don't we call them more often? Call them more often, and they'll have to, and they'll give us more brachas. Why do we let them get away with it? Them. Me. Why do we let them get away with it? Why is it set up in such a way that the kohanim aren't called up? So we've explained that they don't have to. They haven't done anything wrong. Okay. But why do we do it that way? And we're going to learn actually there's 3 answers. We're not going to read it inside because we'll be a little bit against the clock. Read is the Shulchan Aruch brings down 2 reasons. One he's a little bit more comfortable with, and one he brings down from the Maharil he's less comfortable with. The first one he says is because ideally the kohen should go to mikveh before Birchas Kohanim. Remember we said that that's Birchas Kohanim, blessing of the kohanim, is what they would do in the Mishkan, in the house of Hashem. And of course, certainly any kohen that went into the house of Hashem would certainly have to go to mikveh first. So it says the Shulchan Aruch. Now practically, it wasn't always comfortable to go to a mikveh before there was central heating. To heat up a mikveh today is part and parcel of what we do. But going back in the times of the Shulchan Aruch, even earlier, in the winter, to jump into a freezing cold mikveh was uncomfortable. And therefore, practically, it meant that a lot of times the kohanim hadn't gone to mikveh, and therefore it ended up working out that they wouldn't call the kohen. Call the kohen on special occasions. That's one answer, and he's slightly more common than that. The other answer he brings down from the Aril, which he doesn't really enjoy, is the answer of people in a rush. People are rushing out to work on a regular day. And since they're rushing out to work, so to extend the service longer is unhelpful. And therefore, says the Maharil, it's a strain, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't really like that. Come on, a bracha. It's worth your while to wait and hear the bracha from the kohen. You'll have a better day. Your work will go better. He doesn't like it. But it's a second reason. The third reason we're going to read today is from the Alter Rebbe, and that is that actually this is the explains why it doesn't even happen on Shabbos in many communities. And he says basically, frame of mind. The kohen has to be in a good frame of mind in order to bestow blessing. A good frame of mind requires, first of all, that we're not worried. We're not rushing. We're at peace. We're comfortable where we're at. And that happens at Yom Tov more so than any other time. And that's why they wait it and keep it for Yom Tov. Let's read it inside. I'm just going to do a little bit of muting because I'm getting feedback. But if you want to unmute yourself anytime, please do. It goes like this: the prevailing custom in all these lands is to only perform the Birchas Kohanim on the holidays, because then they are reveling in the joy of the holiday, and the good heart blesses. Yeah, and we only do it in Yom Tov. Tov Lev Hu Yivarach. However, on the other days, even on Shabbos, they are distracted by their livelihood or their inability to work, and they're not in a state of joy. And therefore, the Kohen's bracha is better left waiting than being given in a state of non-joy. So if the Kohen is in a bad mood, the Kohen should better wait. Interestingly, we find that in the Shulchan Aruch, that a Kohen who's in a faribah, who's in a fight with somebody in shul, runs a very high risk of self-harm, of self-detriment by getting up there to bless. We say in the bracha Birchas Kohanim that the instruction is to blench the Jewish people ba'ahava, with love, because the koach of Birchas Kohanim is very powerful, very, very powerful. We're directing Hashem's goodness. And as a Kohen getting up to direct Hashem's goodness, it's essential that there should be in a state of joy. Now, the Alter Rebbe quoted here, "V'tov lev hu yivarech." Tov lev hu yivarech is a quote from the Gemara that tells us about benching, that it should be done in a joyous state of mind. It's a beautiful quote because it basically brings in an enormous section that when a person gives someone else a bracha, that we should be very careful how we say it. It happens all the time. I say something nice to somebody, but I say it in a not nice way. Especially when it's people who are family. Because, big deal. I said it. I said, I'm sorry. I said, thank you. He said, thank you. How did it sound like? What did it sound like when I said the nice word, but in a not nice way? Tov lev hu yivarech. Say nice words and say it nicely. So this is the state of joy that is required for the Kohanim. Says the Alter Rebbe, this explains why during the challenging times of exile, challenging times that we're outside of Eretz Yisrael, we don't have a state of simcha, state of joy, so that we leave it to Yom Tov. And on Yom Tov, people are more relaxed. It's only 5 times a year. Rosh Hashanah, Sukkah, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos. So then, in those times, get up there with a simcha, and we do Birchas Kohanim. So that explains not only why they haven't done anything wrong, but also explains why we keep it for special occasions. Good. So we now understand why Kohanim do it so infrequently. Now a question, there's a slide to sum this up. I thought there was maybe. There we go. 1, 2. The first one was mikvah. The second one is keep it quick. The third one is joyous state of mind. We're now going to ask, what happens if you have a non-Kohen who's very generous, and I'm feeling very generous, and the non-Kohen says, you know what, I also want to give everyone a bracha. I'm in the mood of benching everybody. Is the non-Kohen entitled to join the Kohanim up on the bima and say the Birchas Kohanim? What would you say? Should he allow a non-Kohen to do the beautiful act of blessing people?
No.
Think so.
Don't think so.
No.
I think
No?
the Rebbe even
No.
said to a Cohen who came to him that he could do something that the Rebbe couldn't do, which was Birchas Kohanim.
Oh, okay. Birchas Kohanim, you got to be a Kohen to do Birchas Kohanim. Yeah, it's one of those things. Absolutely. You can only you can only be you can only be who you are. If you're not a Kohen, you can't be doing Birchas Kohanim. It's true. But maybe you can do Birchas non-Kohanim. The idea is that whoever said no is right. We're going to read it inside the book. We have it here. Text 9. A non-Kohen who lifted his hands and performed the priestly bracha, even in conjunction with Kohanim, so he didn't do it. One moment. Second. Okay, so the computer needs a charge. We're going to get it plugged in. Very good. So we're saying like this: the non-Kohen who came and raised his hands and tried to bench the people, even if it wasn't on his own. He did it, you know what? I'll do it quietly along with the kohenim, but I'm going to raise my hands and do the proper bracha. The halacha tells us violates a positive commandment is good. Thank you. Violates a positive commandment. It says in the pasuk, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is how you should bless the children of Israel." This implies kohenim, v'lo zarim, kohenim, and non-kohenim, not non-kohenim. So the mitzvah is only on kohenim. Now the question is going to be, if the halacha forbids a non-kohen to give a brachas kohenim, so how can a non-kohen say brachas kohenim? So you might tell me that's true. Maybe they shouldn't. So I'll tell you, I was at a wedding, and the rabbi got up at the chuppah and benched the chassan and kala. I was in shul, and the rav, standing on the bima, benched all the congregation. Not in that, I read the Shulchan Aruch, and it tells me on Erev Yom Kippur, it's the normal that the parents bless the children, fathers, mothers. Some people have the minhag every Shabbos, every Friday night. They bench the children. They were just reading it.
I know.
Sorry?
They don't make a bracha, and they don't say this tefillah. They say a different one.
So are we suggesting that one should not say Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha? It's actually it doesn't say in the Shulchan Aruch this, but we're going to learn that it's very commendable to say Birchas Kohanim Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha. It's actually encouraged, and we're asking how does that work? But the halacha certainly does not forbid saying the words Yivarecha Hashem Yishmerecha. Not only that, we're going to read soon that this is going to be the best bracha to give somebody, because it's so inclusive of everything that you need. It's so inclusive of everything that you need. Therefore, we're going to say that actually, if you're thinking, what should I tell you? I want to give you all the brachas from Aleph till Taf, from A till Z. You know what? Say these three psukim, Yerech Hashem V'recha, Adam V'sam Shmi. But that idea, the question now is, how does it fit in with the halacha we have on the screen? And the answer is going to be that it does fit in. And it's going to connect where we have what exactly is the power of Racham? Do we hope to reflect and change the blessing? We're going to put it on the screen actually that we do have the brachas that people give, regular brachas. Here we are. Here's a quote from the Rebbe Teres Menachem. In many places on the eve of Shabbos or Yom Kippur, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are accustomed to gather in their father's or grandfather's home to receive his bracha. The parent then blesses every member of the family, from the youngest to the eldest, the smallest children aged 3 or 4 years old, or youth already from the after age of Bar Mitzvah, those of marriageable age, already married, or who already have sons and daughters of their own, and every older Jew, and even older Jews who have already married off their children. Everyone gets a bracha, and you give brachas. Amazingly, some of the most powerful moments that we have on video from the Rebbe is the Birchas Habanim, where the Rebbe would bench his students of the yeshiva, and he would say that the Talmidim of the yeshiva, the yeshivans are like his sons, and on Erev Yom Kippur, before he would go down to shul, he would be already dressed in his white kittel and everything ready for shul, and he would go into the upstairs, Beis Medrash, upstairs zal, do Birchas Kohanim, and start off with the V'recha Hashem Yishmerecha V'dav Hashem Moshe Lemer, Dabar Avon Lemer. He would say the Birchas Kohanim, and then he would just pour brachas. Unbelievable. It was just so special, so powerful. And that was the opening to Yom Kippur. And the end of Yom Kippur, of course, was Napoleon's March, which was another tremendous experience. But those sort of ideas demonstrate that clearly it is okay to do Birchas Kohanim. Of course, if there's a Kohen available, so the Kohen should do Birchas Kohanim, because then it's Birchas Kohanim, not Birchas non-Kohanim. But the wording are used across the board, and we're asking, how does it work? The short of the answer is going to be that actually, when we give Birchas Kohanim, here, text 12 is going to be the next text. How can we institutionalize a custom that seems to be in clear violation of a positive injunction that only Kohanim administer this blessing? The answer is going to be no. This is from the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, and here he writes in the Be'er in the Bir Halacha. So he writes in the Bir Halacha, we have one is perplexed by the widespread custom of people, whether or not they are Kohanim, to bless their friends when seeing them off by using the language of the Birchas Kohanim. It was with regard to this that the Torah said, Emer lahem, priests should bless and not others. Lo zarim. How is it permissible for a non-priest to bless his fellow using this blessing? So he says, perhaps one might suggest the rationale for the custom is in accordance with the Bach, who maintains that a non-Kohen who violates this prohibition if he delivers the blessing while holding up and spreading out his hands. So only 2 points. Spreading of the hands is very importantly only for Kohanim, because that's the position the Kohanim would stand in the Beis HaMikdash. And also, since the rabbis have instituted that the priestly blessings are not to be delivered without the accompaniment of prayer, regarding someone who recites the verses of the blessing outside of prayer service, whether or not he's a Kohen, it is considered as if his explicit intention is not to fulfill the mitzvah of the Birchas Kohanim, he's just copying what the Kohanim do, and thus it is permitted. Said the Chafetz Chaim, absolutely fine. It's fine on 2 accounts. Number 1, because you're not doing it with raising your hands. And number 2 is because it's not done in the service summoned by the Chazan. And that's a key factor. So should we bless other people? Definitely yes. Should we use the words of the Birchas Kohanim? We're going to read in a moment. Absolutely yes, because it's the right way to do it. We should be careful not to raise your hands the way the Kohanim do it, even if it's under Talis. The ritual is only borrowing the language of the Kohanim. And here we're going to read that Avraham Avinu is told to go around and give brachas. Avraham Avinu was the first person to start that off, and since then we've all been giving brachas. We read also in the Medrash Bereshis, what does it mean to us? Whoever you see is worthy of a bracha, anyone who's in need, who should get a bracha, give them a bracha, says the Mechilta. Says text 14, actually, who is that? Every Jewish person possesses the capacity to impact the entire world. We are born to be a light into the nations. We are born to change this world. Certainly, this is something one ought to utilize first and foremost by every Jewish person, blessing the rest of the Jewish people in every manner of good. Then Hashem will fulfill this blessing in the manner of blessing those who bless you. What do brachas actually do, though? Let's bring it home. The bottom line is, if one has the question about, we started off with, what does a bracha actually achieve? And here the Rebbe borrows the word hamavrich, bracha, v'yivarechecha, baruch. All these words have the same root. Now, the quote here is from a Mishnah in Kilayim, hamavrich es hagefen, one who bends down a vine. It's, I think in today's language it's called layering. You take a growing vine and you replant one of the branches so it comes back out with more renewed energy, creates more vine. But hamavrich and bracha and yivarechecha and being gebenched all means that we're drawing down, we're bending down goodness so that goodness should be coming all the way down. What does that mean? It means there is brachas, unbelievable brachas waiting to be revealed. Waiting to be revealed means that everybody has lots and lots of kindness from Hashem that are waiting for us. The only trick is, the only problem is that a lot of Hashem's goodness, like everything else, starts off in spiritual form and needs to be transformed, translated, applied to life in the real world, so to speak, life in the tangible, in the here and now. And that's a process that Hashem makes for us, that our neshamas draw down for us. And then we say mazel, you should have good mazel. Mazel means it should drip down. Nozel means something that drips. Mazel toiv, we wish somebody that the mazel that they have, the goodness that they're flowing, should flow all the way down to them. It shouldn't remain in the abstract, in the spiritual, but it should be translated into the here and now. And bracha is exactly that. I wish somebody, you should have a bracha. I'm telling them, or I say yivarechecha, what I'm saying is that the goodness that Hashem certainly has allocated for you should be mavrich, should be brought down into the here and now. Because unfortunately, our behavior sometimes causes blockages. If we stuff unhealthy food through our system, then the pipes in our system get clogged. If we stuff unhealthy foods or unhealthy input into our spiritual system, then at times the goodness doesn't flow all the way down. So it's not like Hashem doesn't want to give it to us. Hashem does give it to us, but it requires something or someone else to jolt and to shake up, to plunger, to clear it out, to push down the goodness that Hashem has waiting for us. And therefore we give people brachas. We give ourselves brachas, we give each other brachas, and we try and draw down the goodness that Hashem certainly has in store for us, but we put it into practice, we make it real by giving a bracha. So the power of bracha is to make something which Hashem is giving closer to its final destination, and the final destination being in the here and now, in life as we know it. Practically speaking, what does that mean to us? The Rebbe tells us, Teres Menachem, everybody has to go around and give brachas to people. Go around and bless. Go away, bless away. Go give more brachas in Bana and Chaya and Mezoyna and Ravicha. And to use the traditional language of the Birchas Kohanim would be even better, for it includes every manner of blessing, literally, down to the most material matters. Bana, Chaya, Mezoyna, children, health, ample sustenance, and may they all be ample and abundant. And all this should be experienced in a tranquil state of body and mind, to the point of utter tranquility, of which it is said, the rest comes from you. And we're going to read here that the Rebbe would encourage those who are blessed. The Rebbe would encourage people to bless one another, especially in an auspicious time. And as we said, we're now in the Yemei Tashlumim. We're in a very uplifted week where we're following on from the heights of Shavuos to putting it down into practice. We should give each other brachas. Even if we're simple, this was the quote we had earlier, even if I feel like who am I, says the Gemara in Maseches Megillah, Ben Chanina also said, let not the blessing of an ordinary man be lightly esteemed in your eyes. Al tehi birchas hedyet kala be'einecha. Even if I don't feel worthy, I should still go around and give brachas, because it's this week's Seder that we learn how the Kohanim are instructed for all generations to come, to constantly go out and bench. And we should emulate the idea of where we share goodness and we give out goodness, and we should even copy the Kohanim in the words, not in the way they position their hands and not in the way of answering when they're called up, but every other way we should certainly get involved. And may Hashem bench everybody, that you should all have all the brachas that you think of and those that you haven't thought of. With Bana Chaim is brachas of the Birchas Kohanim, and especially Frida Bas Bracha, Shadara Refuah Shalema. We dedicate today's learning to her refuah and to the refuah of all Chayla Klal Yisrael, and all the whole world should have a refuah and Yeshua, and we should have the biggest Yeshua, Mashiach Tzidkenu, now. Thank you all for joining, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. Bye.
Take care.
I only joined late. Could I ask a question, please?
Sure.
On was the Birchas Kohanim? I mean, remote, obviously.
How does it work today?
No, I mean, last weekend we had Shavuos, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether the Kohanim, like yourself, for example, were able to say Birchas Kohanim even though everybody was in their own home.
So the answer is, someone just put on the chat, I kind of couldn't do the actual Birchas Kohanim, not in full, but at home on a random day, not on Yom Tov. And the answer is yes, like anybody else, because the takana is like that we only do Birchas Kohanim with a bracha when it's in the service, in the tefillah, and summoned by the chazan. That's how the Konas Chachamim is. So practically, personally, I wasn't able to do Birchas Kohanim, but if I'm not mistaken, my brother was able to do Birchas Kohanim because he lives in a block where they have a street minyan. It's tremendous how safe it is. It's like in Yerushalayim, with all the houses all around, and it's like a little park area in the middle. So then the lane, everyone is like really, really properly safe distance. And yet there's a proper Mohudadig minyan. So he likely, I didn't ask him, but likely he probably did Birchas Kohanim.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you very much.
Very good.
All the very best. Thank you.
Otherwise, you be benched.
Amen.
Take care.
Thank you.
Kol tov.